Kamala Harris got caught again copying off of Donald Trump's playbook. She basically repeated Donald Trump's policy of no taxes on tips. But see, as pointed out by Fox News host Maria Bartiromo, if Kamala Harris wanted to cut taxes, she could do so now. She's already vice president of the United States. Check this out.
Well, first of all, there's the light side. Wow, what petty theft or grand larceny. But then there's the serious side. How does she reconcile that against the policy she's been a part of with Biden-Harris, where they've gone after, haven't they not, with the IRS, things like taxes on tips?
Yeah, that's right. That happened last year when they were cracking down on tips, wanting to tax them. Look, Will, good morning to you. Of course, it is said that imitation is the best form of flattery. The question now is, will she actually follow through? President Trump has been known to have his finger on the pulse when it comes to economics. He was a businessman, ran a payroll, obviously knows how to look for and actually achieve economic growth. He has shown us that in his own businesses, and there is a reason that most voters trust Trump on the economy over Kamala Harris right now. But I think it's important to ask the question of trust. Can we trust that she will actually carry through and do that, particularly since this ticket is among the biggest tax and spenders that we know of? President Biden's budget for 2025, of course, has already been released, and it includes $5.5 trillion of new taxes and higher taxes, $5.5 trillion of higher taxes. The Wall Street Journal last week wrote this about Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's running mate. The Minnesota tax and spend model. Minnesota has long boasted the highest taxes in the Midwest, including a top income tax rate, 9.85%. That kicks in at $193,000. Only New York and Oregon tax their upper middle class more. This from the Wall Street Journal. Minnesota's corporate tax of 9.8%, also the nation's second highest after New Jersey. And the state is among the few to impose a death tax. Yes, after you pay taxes your whole life, your heirs will have to pay 16% on what you leave them, statewide business property tax as well. So it doesn't exactly jive with what we're seeing from her running mate and what we have seen from Kamala Harris as the vice president. And let's be clear, if she really wanted to cut taxes, she could do so right now. After all, she is the vice president right now.
So I don't know if Kamala forgot, but isn't she in office right now? Why not just go ahead and make these proposals now while she and Joe Biden are still in office? It's just amazing how none of these things are happening right now. And this is why it's complete bull. And people are calling them out for it. But then again, some people say that she's just straight up biting off of Donald Trump because she has no clue what she's doing. You know what I mean, guys? But really, our main story tonight is how Vice President Kamala Harris has gone 20 plus days without holding a single formal press conference or even a sit-down interview since becoming the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee. And even worse, guys, mainstream media like MSNBC, they're trying to defend her. Now, for one, MSNBC co-host Michael Steele chastised the media for whining about Vice President Kamala Harris's limited engagement with the press and said that she can bypass reporters entirely and make her case to the public without them. I mean, you got to hear this for yourself, you guys.
The highbrow nature of the press coming at Kamala Harris saying, well, she, in my view, whining that she doesn't talk to us. She hasn't done a sit down with us. She hasn't done interviews with us. And I watched that press conference and I go, well, when you start actually asking real questions of Donald Trump and pressing him, then that sort of creates a space of balance. But then I look at polling. You have the New York Times Siena poll showing Harris versus Trump in battleground states. Michigan, she's up by 4, 50-46. Pennsylvania, up by 4, 50-46. And in Wisconsin, up by 4, 50-46. Strategically, why do I need to talk to you right now? I'm talking to the American people, and we're having a conversation. You know she's going to sit down at some point. But right now, is there a real need for her to sort of, get the imprimatur of the press on her campaign and her efforts when she's having a very good conversation seemingly with the American people without them?
So what do you think, you guys? Make it make sense. They're actually defending Kamala Harris for her choosing to stay away from the media? I mean, come on. Sure, she made headlines by picking Tim Walz as her running mate just recently, but the two still have not been questioned formally in interviews or even press conferences. On the other hand, Donald Trump's VP pick, Senator J.D. Vance, has been urging reporters to show a little bit of self-awareness and pushed Kamala Harris to do the job of a presidential candidate by speaking to them. He tells the press that they've got to stop giving her a honeymoon and pretending that she's something that she isn't. Former President Donald Trump also hit her lack of media access during his own pretty long and impressive news conference at Mar-a-Lago recently. He said that Kamala does not know how to do a news conference and that she's just not smart enough to be able to do a news conference. Meanwhile, you got Donald Trump doing this lengthy news conference. His campaign even branded the presser as a stark contrast to Harris's lack of media availability. Now, at some point, you gotta wonder whether Harris is afraid of the press, whether she's afraid of getting asked the tough questions, or what is the deal? I mean, even Charlamagne the Fraud, an American radio host that's all for Kamala Harris, voiced his concerns about the vice president being unavailable to the media.
I really don't know. I mean, it's the bottom of the ninth inning, right? Like, I feel like she should be any and everywhere, having these conversations. I truly don't know why she hasn't, done any interviews yet.
Katie's pressure building on her to be more unscripted?
I don't know if pressure's building, but I think what we're seeing from her and her campaign is a normal campaign. Donald Trump the other day impromptu called for a press conference, a 2-hour press conference that was impulsive and angry. And right now we're seeing a campaign run by professionals and by people who know what they're doing. It's the campaigns that senators run, the campaigns that other presidential campaigns have run, and it's strategic and it's tactical. She will come out and do interviews, but right now she's doing the things that matter. She's going to rallies, she's talking to voters, and she's talking to donors, and she's finalizing her policy platform before the convention.
Does she need to show that she can handle herself unscripted in news conferences or interviews?
Yes, the teleprompter is her best friend. And we can argue that this is new, that she has just been given the keys to the kingdom for being the presidential nominee. She should have been getting groomed with this for years. Months even, but she's still sticking to the same talking points, the same speech. It's getting to be a little too much, and they just need fresh content. You can't just rely on social media to have it winning the hearts. She needs to actually be talking, giving the rallies, and there's no reason why she shouldn't be sitting down for softballs.
So yeah, there's no reason why she shouldn't be sitting down for interviews. Then again, Sarah Selip made a very good point here. Maybe Kamala's not doing live questions because the teleprompter is her best friend. I mean, we're just trying to avoid the worst possible outcome for our country with the November election here. And I think Kamala Harris finally sitting down to do an honest interview, maybe even a press conference, will show us her true colors, and that it's going to be the deciding factor for a lot of Americans. You know what I'm saying, guys? Even CNN host and Washington Post columnist Fareed Zakaria spoke up about how Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, are leading a highly emotion-based, vibes-heavy campaign. In his own words, light on substance and high on feelings. And that's coming from a CNN host and Washington Post columnist, you guys. All the details and so much more in today's video, so stay right there. So we're 20 plus days in, you guys. Vice President Kamala Harris has gone 20 plus days without holding a formal press conference or a sit-down interview since becoming the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee. After President Joe Biden stepped back and endorsed her on July 21st, Harris came out as the likely nominee, officially clinching the nomination recently. She's been out and about on the campaign trail, talking at events and giving informal remarks to reporters, but has not managed a formal press conference or in-depth interview in the 3 weeks, almost a month now, that has followed. And I think she knows how bad she's doing. She tried saving some face by briefly talking to reporters traveling with her to Michigan. It was just over a minute. She basically just said that she's excited about debating Donald Trump on September 10th on ABC, and she stood up for her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's military record. She also mentioned that her team is trying to line up an interview before the month is out. The operative word here being try. She made headlines when she announced Walz as her vice presidential choice, but even as a duo, they haven't really sat down with the media in a formal setting. And GOP vice presidential candidate JD Vance wasn't going to let him get away with that. He's been pretty outspoken, urging the media to push Harris harder for answers. He even challenged reporters to step up and encourage Kamala Harris to really step into her role as a presidential candidate. Trump also took a swipe at her during a lengthy interview or news conference at Mar-a-Lago, questioning Kamala Harris's ability to handle a news conference. Now, over at National Review, a senior writer, Noah Rothman, has been asking on social media when Harris is going to hold a press conference. According to Rothman, the most revealing exposure to which a candidate can submit is a prolonged press conference, and that's precisely what Harris needs to do. So Tim Graham from Newsbusters thinks Harris might stick to the same low-profile approach that Joe Biden used in 2020. He criticized both Biden and Harris for avoiding tough media engagements, unlike Trump, who despite harsh media treatment didn't shy away. He even said one would expect Harris to hold a press conference when when she names her vice presidential pick. But we cannot expect her to break from Biden's serial avoidance of press conferences. According to Graham, since the 2020 campaign, we have witnessed the bizarre spectacle of Donald Trump granting wide access to networks that suggest he's a fascist and hammer him daily. Meanwhile, Biden and Harris won't grant interviews to the media outlets that gurgle all over them and their historic accomplishments. And this is why he says that they either think that the press can never be servile enough, or they're projecting a complete lack of confidence in their efforts to put complete sentences together. And so what does Harris's campaign have to say about all this, right? That it's them being strategic, creative, and expeditious in getting their message to the voters in ways that are most impactful. Okay, now the question is, will the American people believe Harris, let alone vote for her, if they don't see her getting scrutinized in an honest interview? You know what I mean? Let me know if this makes sense to you guys. And if given a chance, what would you ask Kamala Harris at a press conference? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. By the way, if you haven't already, definitely hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And thanks so much for always sharing these videos on Facebook and Twitter. You guys are amazing. Now, I'm not sure which one's worse. Is it Kamala Harris avoiding the press or mainstream media trying to defend her? I mean, you heard MSNBC co-host Michael Steele earlier in that clip. Steele defended Harris for largely avoiding the media since becoming the Democratic nominee and accused reporters of treating former President Donald Trump with kid gloves during his press conference last week. He even asked, is there a real need for her to sort of get the imprimatur of the press on her campaign and her efforts when she's having a good conversation seemingly with the American people without them? Yeah, I think so. A presidential candidate should stand up to the questions of the media. And I don't think that there should be any kind of argument about it in the first place. Then again, Notice reporter Jasmine Wright pointed out that Harris's past damaging moments are on her team's mind as they're deliberately trying to keep her away from the press. She mentioned that first interview she did back in 2021 with Lester Holt about her work on immigration, when Harris scrambled as she was pressed on visiting the southern border. But shouldn't that be all the more reason for her to want to face the media now? Even major liberal media outlet The New Yorker published a piece calling on journalists to press Kamala Harris on questions about her policies so that voters know where she stands with November drawing very close. The New Yorker staff writer Jay Caspian King wrote that Kamala Harris's campaign strategy involves her staying away from the press and waiting for former President Donald Trump to make a mistake. That's her whole strategy. But he also argued that it's the media's job not to let the Democratic candidate get away with hiding prior to or potentially assuming the most powerful office in the world. That it's the job of the press and a healthy democracy to make sure that voters know who they're supporting. Because right now, Kamala Harris's campaign is running more on vibes, if nothing else. But take my word for it, guys. CNN host and Washington Post columnist Fareed Zakaria said the same thing in his recent. According to Zakaria, Harris has a remarkably focused and disciplined campaign, one that seems deliberately light on substance and high on feelings. And this whole avoiding the media thing is kind of part of her campaign strategy. Zakaria said instead, she has focused herself on the American people in entirely human terms, presenting herself as a dynamic, warm, funny, and optimistic person. It's heavy on vibes, and so far, it seems to be working. But seriously, guys, are people going to vote for their next president based on vibes? Let me know what you think on this one, guys, because I'm starting to worry about our country if this is the kind of approach that's working with some Americans. You know what I mean? So yeah, drop your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys. And if you want another deep dive video recommendation, then you don't have to go too far. Right here, I got another video for you where we talked about Donald Trump himself looking into Kamala's most recent mishaps. AAA stuff, you guys. Do not miss it. As always, thanks so much for watching, and a double thanks for hitting the like button. I'll see you guys on the next one.